Blessings. We have a few questions have come in today. Dear Ajahn Kalyano, what does it mean to develop your meditation object? How does one develop it? Thank you. Well, this is a term of phrase. Develop your meditation object. That's assuming you're practicing a technique of meditation using an object. And so learning to pay attention to that object, keep it in mind, would be the main explanation of the term, develop your meditation object. You need to learn the skill of keeping it in mind. So if it's the breath, or recollection of the Buddha, recollection of death, contemplation of the body, the four elements, there's many different meditation objects that we can use to train the mind. And developing an object means using it regularly, frequently, keeping it in mind often. So for the period of your formal meditation, sitting and walking, that might mean really just concentrating as much as you can on that one object and letting go of all the other distractions, such as they come up, what we call the 5 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, dullness, restlessness and anxiety, skeptical doubt. And these are the 5 groups of hindrances that will alternately arise to take your attention away from your meditation object. So developing your meditation object means developing that ability to stay on your object or with your object, to know your object, rather than let the mind get distracted by these other things. So that's a skill, something we have to practice or develop. And we'll need many other qualities to support the mindfulness, which is probably the main quality you're developing or cultivating. You're cultivating the ability to pay attention to your object or be mindful of an object. But you need effort, you need a certain willingness or desire to practice. You need patience with the changing nature of the mind and the different distractions. You need some wisdom to deal with the obstacles that come up and to reflect back on what's going on. So there are a number of other qualities which you'll bring into your meditation. And also, you don't just develop a meditation object when you're doing formal sitting or walking meditation. You can bring your mind to pay attention to your meditation object in all kinds of situations. When you've got a few moments, even for 1 minute, you can become mindful of the breathing. When you're walking along the street or in some ordinary situation you're walking, you can recollect the Buddha, recite Buddha as you walk. As you're doing some fairly simple task which doesn't require you to talk a lot or make decisions or concentrate on something like when you're typing, but just to do something quite simple like cleaning or something that's repetitive, you could recite Buddha. So it could be gardening or sweeping leaves, you can recite Buddha, Buddha as you're doing that. So you could be developing your meditation object or keeping your mind on your meditation object as much as you can, even though you're doing another task. So this term means kind of making your meditation object and the practice of being mindful of it central to your life, even though you'll have times when you maybe have to focus your mind elsewhere, to think, to work things out, to concentrate on other tasks, other activities. But you'll keep returning to your meditation object often, as much as you can, as a way to gain some real strength of mindfulness. If you're cultivating Vipassana meditation, well, you might have a multitude of objects arising into your awareness, meaning you're becoming, because your mindfulness, we assume, is fairly strong and continuous, then it's possible to be mindful of thoughts, feelings, memories, sensations in the body, different aspects of your experience, which means different objects. But because you have a steadiness of mind from the presence of sati and samadhi, you may be mindful of the impermanent nature, for example, what we call the anicca lakkhana, the characteristic of impermanence, for example, from moment to moment. So you may have changing objects as you practice Vipassana, but you're also focusing your mind or keeping the object of impermanence or the perception of impermanence in your mind over and over again, and noticing that, contemplating that in your experience. So, developing one single object, cultivating mindfulness of an object would be called, normally we call that samata meditation. Vipassana is cultivating awareness of or insight into the three characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness or dukkha, and not self, anatta. Dear Lumbo, at what meditation level does one train the citta to prepare for sickness and eventually death? Well, we can prepare for that any moment of our day, of our life. So from the basic or beginner's level right through to the expert level and everything in between, you can cultivate the awareness that your life is going to end one day. The people you love, one day they will also pass away. Animals, pets, strangers, people you meet, everyone one day will die, and we don't know how people will die or we will die, but we know we will die, and everyone we meet one day will die. So already you can bring that reflection up, and you should. The Buddha encouraged us to reflect on this as a daily practice. As we just chanted this evening, we have these reflections such as, I am of the nature to die, I have not gone beyond dying. It means it's definitely going to happen. We don't want it to happen maybe, we don't like the idea, but it is inevitable. Sickness is the same. We have minor ailments, aches and pains, injuries, and we have major illnesses and sickness, and some of them become life-threatening as well. It's just part of life. Aging, sickness, death is part of life. And in order to keep your mind free from stress and suffering, to keep your mind in a bright, happy, peaceful, wholesome state, well, we have to develop some understanding and insight of these basic truths of life so that they don't stress us out, cause us fear, cause us aversion, which of course they always are regularly for many people. but you can maybe come to terms with them better through regular reflection and practice. So from day one, following the Buddhist path, this is a reflection you can cultivate. You don't have to wait until you're very deep in a state of samadhi or experience, special states of mindfulness and samadhi before you contemplate these things. You just accept in the beginning it's more just thinking about these issues and these aspects of life, just reminding yourself, thinking about how it affects you, how it will affect other people, thinking about the nature of life to get some wisdom and a good attitude or a correct attitude. But later when your mindfulness improves and your meditation is very still and calm, or maybe you can investigate an aspect of aging, sickness and death in a more refined or close-up way, and develop some penetrating insight into the impermanent nature of your body, for example. So of course, as your mindfulness improves and you experience more calm, more peace, your mind is clearer to have insight and develop insight into such things as the impermanent nature of this body and mind. But it doesn't mean to say in the beginning you can't do it. It just means maybe your reflection, your contemplation is not so clear, not so strong, not so sustained. To contemplate the idea of death at first is hard, difficult, so you maybe can just do it for a few moments or a few minutes. But later when you have more calm and tranquility from meditation, maybe you can stay with that object and that theme for quite a while. But it'll get easier the more you do it, so start early is what I recommend. After one attains some level of samadhi, what withdrawal steps does he or she need to take when withdrawing from that state? Well, if one practices a lot of mindfulness and meditation regularly and puts effort into it regularly, frequently, then hopefully you can gain a skill with concentrating your mind, developing states of samadhi, if only for brief periods of time, but sometimes maybe deeper, longer lasting states as well. But in the beginning I wouldn't worry too much about controlling your mind, to enter a state of samadhi, withdrawing from a state of samadhi. Teachers who are probably quite skilled in it talk like this. But the ordinary or average meditator may not have that kind of skill. It's more a matter of committing yourself to doing the practice of meditation, putting effort into it, and you may find sometimes your meditation, you're quite successful in calming, concentrating the mind, being aware from moment to moment, keeping a clarity, a peace of mind. And sometimes for small periods, short periods, you may be very peaceful and seem to absorb into a state of what we call samadhi. Sometimes you might experience deeper, longer lasting states. But you'll probably find it's a bit hit and miss, and it's a bit unpredictable, and it's not under your control. And you may not always be fully aware of what were the good conditions that led to your peaceful, calm state of mind during meditation. You may be aware of some of them, but sometimes we're not even aware why we're peaceful completely. Why one day we're peaceful and another day we're not. There's a lot of different kinds of karma going on from our past and then currently as well. But if one becomes very skilled in samadhi, well then maybe it does become then something that one can quickly calm the mind down and develop or enter a state of samadhi, and one may even be able to decide how long and then withdraw. A lot of the time what we call withdrawing from samadhi means opening your eyes, getting up from your meditation cushion, stopping the walking meditation and turning to do something else, and then observing thoughts arise again, feelings, sensations arise again after a period where you may have been very still and concentrated. And that doesn't take a lot of management. It may happen quite naturally. You've been peaceful for a while and then you turn away to do some other activity. Maybe it's necessary, you have an appointment or something, maybe it's just naturally your mind comes back from its place of stillness and then you start thinking and planning and doing things, talking, whatever. Ajahn Chah used to always say, it's quite challenging to develop a state of samadhi. It's even harder to maintain mindfulness when you finish your formal meditation. You go away to do other things, your mind will very quickly get distracted and you'll lose your mindfulness, the sense of peace may all fade away. If one was very skilled in the whole thing, okay, it might not fade away, and one may be skilled in maintaining mindfulness in all postures, different activities, not easily distracted. That would be quite an advanced level of meditation, I'd say. So we do have to accept we're not necessarily going to be able to control our mind, enter samadhi, leave samadhi at first at any rate. That comes through with a lot of practice. Dear Ajahn, in a recent Dhamma talk, I heard you speak about the human mind. I have also heard and read the words the mind and your mind. Would there be a benefit for practitioners such as myself to learn about the similarities and differences for how and why mind is referenced in these various ways? Well, when we talk about the Dhamma, I know I do this a lot, often talking in very ordinary, simple terms, not using a lot of jargon, not using a lot of Pali or specific technical terms quite often, just for ease of speech and description, but at the same time, sometimes it means one can talk about the same thing but using slightly different words each time. And then of course different people, different teachers will do that. No one teacher will talk exactly the same way as another. So something like the mind, well yes, sometimes we talk about your mind. It's just a phrase, isn't it? A way of speaking. Sometimes we are talking about the mind as though, the way the mind works. How well the one talking knows how the mind works, well, that may vary from person to person. When we talk about your mind, sometimes I use the word your mind and I'm really referring to my mind from my experience and trying to relate that to other people for their benefits. And we say your mind, it doesn't just necessarily mean your mind, it can also mean my mind or the mind of the speaker. Sometimes we use the phrase one's mind. Sometimes we say the mind, just to emphasize the impersonality of it. Ultimately, through the Buddhist practice training in mindfulness, samadhi, and developing insight, hopefully you get to have insight into the mind and understand the mind doesn't really have an owner. So it's neither mine nor yours, but on the normal level of speaking, we'll say it's my mind, your mind. We talk like that because it's convenient. But in the end, there's no one who owns this mind. You might just say it's a natural quality, the mind is a natural thing that doesn't belong to anyone. It's just most of the time we're not seeing that. We have the delusion of a self. I think, I feel, this mind is mine, this body is mine, the mind is mine. That's the kind of way we view things because of our delusion and accumulation of karma and different mental defilements bring us the idea that this mind belongs to me, and I think and I own every thought. I become certain ways, I have certain feelings, and I'm a certain way, and we have this what we call self-identity view. We view the body, the feelings, the thoughts that we have as a self, or from the point of view of a self. Something that's permanent, lasting, solid, linked together, grouped together. And the practice of meditation, developing mindfulness insight, is helping to maybe question that and look deeper and see, well, actually, is that correct? Is there a self or not? And it's quite fine to ask the question, do I really own these thoughts of mine? Maybe it will help you to understand what's going on better. In Pali, and sometimes it's worth looking at the Pali, where we have different words like citta or mano for mind, vijnana, consciousness, mano vijnana, mind consciousness. There's a few definitions you could look at, and then also look at the suttas and how the Buddha presents the Dhamma and how he sometimes changes the word. And sometimes it's just a matter of style, I would say, language style. But it depends what the Buddha is talking about, and then of course other teachers as well, what they're talking about and the context and so on. So there are a number of Pali words that relate to the mind, just as in English we might use different words like mind, consciousness and so on. Would there be a benefit for... I am not sure if this is a proper question. Is one or more of these terms, the mind, the knowing mind, or the mind that knows? Here the language again can be a little challenging and people will use it differently, but a phrase I picked up and some other teachers who studied with Ajahn Chah picked up is this sense, this phrase, the one who knows, or the knowing. In Thai it's puru, which means the one who knows. The emphasis is that it's a quality of knowing, you might say awareness, but knowing, but it's impersonal, because as you train the mind in the knowing, meaning bringing up the quality of mindfulness, clear comprehension, and then ultimately panya, wisdom or insight, you're taking away the sense of me knowing something and just knowing in a very natural and impersonal way, objective way. So that's why we often use the word the knowing or the one who knows. Because you say the one, well, it brings up a sense of self again. Who is the one? Am I the one? Are you the one? Who is the one? So it can be a little tricky, but the idea is that there is this natural quality that is part of a human being, which is the mental part, the mind that knows, which in its rawest, simplest sense doesn't have an owner, doesn't have a name, doesn't belong to anyone. It's just a quality that comes with being a human being. You can know things. You have a physical form and you have a mind that knows. And as we kind of investigate the truth through practice, it reveals to us that actually there's no owner to the mind or the body. So there's no self, these things are no self, the five khandhas are not a self. These are the areas we're investigating and where insight arises. But for training purposes, while using the phrase the one who knows can be quite helpful, you keep returning to this quality of knowing, or the one who knows, over and over again. First of all, maybe in meditation, but later maybe just in all walks of life, all aspects of daily life, you can cultivate the one who knows as you're doing other things. So maybe even as you speak, talk to someone, or do different activities that involve thinking and doing things, you can still maintain or cultivate the one who knows as you're doing these other activities. It's harder, so it's something you cultivate over time through practice. But it's a quality, the quality of the one who knows is something to develop at all times, as much as possible. What you call it, the knowing, the one who knows, the mind that knows, well, that may be a personal preference as well, but it's more pointing to that aspect, ability of the mind to know, to be mindful, to be present at all times, as much as possible. Dear Luang Por, thank you for answering our questions. Can you kindly provide us with some examples, a few examples of the moment of emptiness that I have been too foolish to notice, please? I have been practicing meditation. I do experience stillness, but it's only when I'm in a meditative state. Can the moment of emptiness be experienced in real time? When I am in crowded places, if there's awareness, I could sense that my mind is on its own, even though there is a lot of commotion. It feels like a separation from the world, but I am still aware of what is actually going on around me. Is this an example of what you meant by moments of emptiness? With gratitude and appreciation. Perhaps, yes, perhaps it is. My experience, and other people I've talked to, often they have similar things, is that if you practice formal meditation regularly, cultivate mindfulness regularly, sitting meditation, walking meditation, and your ability to maintain mindfulness improves, and you also get the accompanying states of calm, feelings in body and mind that feel more relaxed, more calm. You start to manage your emotions a bit better maybe, develop more insight into some of the different Buddhist teachings maybe. That will condition the similar qualities that you're developing in formal meditation to arise when you're not formally meditating. You're just doing some ordinary activity, but your mind may also turn to a state of mindfulness, reflect on some Dhamma, become very still and peaceful. At times when you weren't planning it or expecting it, it can happen. And just moments of insight, moments where your attention turns inwards, as you say, maybe in a crowded place or in a busy situation in the middle of some activity. Sometimes it just happens. Maybe it's the result of previous meditation that we've been doing. Sometimes it's just fleeting for a few seconds, moments. Sometimes it's more profound and it lasts a few minutes. Sometimes, like you say, there's a real sense of the mind gathering together and totally separate from the world, but you're still aware and you're still there and you have a body and you know you have a body and you're maybe even doing something, moving around. But this sense of separation comes up quite clearly and strongly sometimes. And you may have a sense that your physical body is kind of empty of self. It feels like it's just a lump of flesh or some kind of robot or something like that, even though it's still the same old body, but it's the mind, the way the mind views it that changes, even if only for a few moments. Maybe the mind kind of withdraws to a state of very peaceful stillness, or you might call emptiness, just for a few moments or sometimes longer. It can happen. Sometimes it's more from watching the mind itself, contemplating emotions, feelings that have been coming up, different thought patterns and trains of thought. It can also arise. Just noticing how a train of thought that was filling your mind up, taking your attention for a while, and then noticing it's gone. Particularly if it was some train of thought associated with some stress, suffering, unhappiness of some way, some sort, and then it's gone. And you notice that. You become mindful that that previous suffering you were thinking about, experiencing, has passed. And there may be a few brief moments or a longer period where you feel really calm, still, free from suffering, free from the burdens of a body, of your thoughts, of your moods. You may feel what you might call empty. Empty of self, empty of suffering, very peaceful. And that also you may feel like separate from your body, your thoughts, separate from the world. Just depends. I mean, there's many, many ways these kind of experiences come up. Sometimes in formal meditation, sometimes not. So I think many meditators over time may start to have some of those experiences more deeply and profoundly, or sometimes just in small ways. So just keep observing. It's not something you have to want or crave or expect, but just observe what happens and you may see that. Just observe how your thoughts come up and pass away. Your moods change through the day. If you ever catch that change where something you were thinking and absorbed into fades, you might notice the mind going to this spaciousness for a little while, but then there's not much happening. It's kind of empty for a while. And this is not the emptiness of feeling life is meaningless, pointless. It's not an emptiness that comes with a feeling of depression or sadness. It's more like an emptiness of just peace. Maybe a lack of a mental activity, a lack of anything happening, but you're still aware. It's not sleepiness either. So it's just something to observe, and you may notice that as well as when you're doing formal meditation, where your mind actually might become very still, one-pointed for longer periods. Again, experiencing a form of emptiness for a while. So all of this will come through experience. Keep practicing. Dear Ajahn, are we allowed to observe 8 precepts at home? Yes. What is the difference between 8 precepts and 8 precepts Brahmani? Well, one has the word Brahmani on the end. And the 8 precepts are the 8 precepts. Whether you're man, woman in a monastery, at home, they're the basic practices of a meditation retreat or someone living in a monastery, but sometimes it's not convenient to go out on a retreat or go and stay in a monastery, but you want to practice, commit more to your practice, simplify your life, support your meditation. So some people will keep the 8 precepts at home. It's quite common for Buddhists to do this, maybe one day a week or one day a month, or for a few days they may even commit to their own self-retreat at home. And so they stop eating in the evening, not engaging in entertainments and music, and just dressing simply and sleeping simply and so on. Keeping the 8 precepts to support their Dhamma practice. Many people do this. So yes, you can do it at home. If you're in a monastery where you may follow a course or do it with a teacher, so you take the precepts with a teacher, and there may be a whole program, you may call that program Brahmani. Brahmani comes from the same root as brahmacharya, and you'll notice the 3rd precept, a brahmacharya veramani, is celibacy, and that's associated with people who want to really train their mind in the meditation, live simply. Well, part of that, it means celibate, disengaging with your partner, and not seeking to have sexual activity, but just focusing all your attention and energy on the training of mindfulness and developing insight. So Brahmani means practice of being celibate, whether you're in a monastery or at home. The 8 precepts they're there for us to use to train ourselves wherever we are. We can develop them if we wish. Luang Por, I had an image of a very sickly body appear during my meditation yesterday. As the image wasn't very close up, there was movement in the mind wanting to bring it closer, and the image started to fade after that. Whatever I held up later felt like a fabricated image. This was the same thing that happened in the previous time when I saw myself as a corpse. Is that wanting to bring the image closer already tainting the process, therefore the image started to fade? Or is it a sign of the samadhi not being strong and stable enough? Well, yes, I think it is, and those two things are the same, isn't it? The image, wanting to bring an image closer, tainting the process, meaning it's distracting you. Really, these images, whether it's lights or image of a sickly body or a corpse, are a result of wholesome karma, your effort in both developing mindfulness and then reflecting on the Dhamma. But they are arising without you trying. It sounds like it's that kind of image, which will happen. It's not you're creating the image or wanting or trying to have that image arise. It arises as a result of the effort you put into both developing mindfulness and insight. But like you say, immediately the mind says, oh, I want this image to come closer, or I want to hold it in my mind, I want to do something with it. You start to take ownership of the image rather than staying mindful. So whatever the image, your number one aim is always to maintain mindfulness. And with mindfulness you get some equanimity, objectivity, detached awareness. So if the image fades, you're doing your best to be mindful, the image fades or it's too far away or something, well, just accept that and let it happen. Keep mindful rather than trying to do something at that moment, because the doing will distract you, I think. Over time, if one practices a lot, regularly, frequently, maybe certain images will arise again and again, and maybe one can start using them as an object of meditation. But there has to be the mindfulness, the stillness to do that. And quite often in meditation, when we're not that still, as you say, the samadhi is not that strong, images will come up, and they may be a good sign, a sign of some insight, or a sign the mind is peaceful, but then they fade away again. You might call that momentary concentration, kanika samadhi perhaps. Later, if you develop deeper states of concentration, stronger mindfulness, more continuous mindfulness, it may be you experience upajjhara samadhi, access concentration, and maybe that nimitta will stay longer. And maybe you can just observe it without it fading away because of the strength of mindfulness. You have to be honest, if mindfulness is not that strong, samadhi is not that strong, these images fade, just accept that and keep practicing. But always come back to your basic object of mindfulness. Try to maintain the mindfulness and not get distracted even by images that seem to bring some insight or they're a sign of something. However profound or important they seem, be careful because they'll pull your attention away, and then the whole samadhi will kind of fade and crumble and disappear. And that may happen quite often. So you'll learn a lesson after a while. I'm not going to get caught again. I'll just stay mindful here with my object, and whatever image arises, let it arise. Until you're more skilled, perhaps, until you can do it better. Dear Ajahn, during my meditation and listening to your Dhamma talk, negative emotions are only temporary visitors to the mind. A spirit lady showed up in my sight, crying with tears dropping. I was calm and told her in my heart, "May you be free from suffering." She disappeared a few seconds later. Do spirits wander anywhere, anytime? If so, should we turn on chanting and Dhamma talk as often as possible at home to help them to practice Dhamma teaching? Well, first thing is, it may or may not be a being, a spirit. It may be your own mind's creation. That's quite common. It can be a memory, it can be a fabrication of your mind, imagination. Or perhaps it's some other being. If you're not sure, then you have to keep an open mind. That may be the first thing. And another thing is, whatever image it is, whether it's self-created or something external, it comes and it goes, it arises and it ceases. And that's another thing you can know. But if it's clear enough to give you some perception, some idea what it is, well, like you say, a lady crying sounds like a sign of somebody is sad, suffering, doesn't it? Again, it could be from your own mind, or it could be something external. Either way, you probably wish that person that you're seeing, or the image of a person, to be free from suffering, like you did. Out of compassion, kindness, you wish them well, may they be free from suffering. Maybe that's all you need to do, and the image fades, whether it's an external being or your own creation. The turning to compassion, well-wishing, and also maybe you're being a bit more mindful and paying attention is enough for that image to disappear. So maybe that's all you need to do. All you need to concern yourself with is the image has arisen, passed away. You wish them well, you wish yourself well, you wish others well, because nobody likes to suffer. As far as turning on Dhamma talks and chanting so that the spirits in your home can hear the Dhamma, well, I wouldn't be careful not to get carried away. But we can chant, and certainly you will benefit listening to Dhamma talks. You can chant, and that will help you, and you can learn these chants, reflect on them, make yourself mindful doing them. If any spirits are around and they benefit and they're happy, all the better. But I wouldn't think too much about that. I would focus more on your own practice. And then maybe from time to time, yes, you share merit, or you spread metta to all beings in all realms. So if there's anything around, may they benefit from your Dhamma practice as well. That's good. Dear Ajahn, was Mahamogalana a monk when he first tried to rescue his mother? Well, as far as I know, yes. This is a bit of a legend. I'm not sure there's anything in the suttas about it, but certainly in legend and in commentaries, meaning later texts, there's stuff about some of Venerable Mahamogalana's use of his psychic ability, and he did see that his mother, they say, had been reborn as a preta, hungry ghost. And the Buddha did teach that hungry ghosts can receive merit particularly from their relatives who do meritorious deeds and dedicate it to them. They can receive it. It can be a cause for them to rejoice, be happier, and be reborn out of that realm. Other realms it's harder. And often this story about Mahamogalana is talked about as him going to the hell realms. And he probably did go to the hell realms, but the beings who particularly can receive merit are the hungry ghosts, the pretas, as opposed to hell realms. It doesn't mean to say he didn't go to the hell realms or in some way help beings in hell realms. The one story I was always told was that Mahamogalana, traveling through the hell realms, one person who previously had a lot of faith in Buddhism, but had done a lot of bad things through their delusions. They had hurt a lot of people and so were reborn in hell. But because they saw Mahamogalana, the corner of his robe, as he kind of floated past, the faith in the Buddha and the Sangha arose, and that being was reborn out of the hell realm. That's another story. But Mahamogalana helping his mother is a very often talked about story, and often it's quoted as the basis for this practice. We call it opening the doors of heaven and hell and the different realms, lower realms, to receive merit during this time, during the Vasa. The story being that monks were getting enlightened at this time, so it was considered a good time to make merit for your deceased relatives who are suffering. So in the Vasa we have one day which is the Chinese version of opening the gates of heaven and hell, and then 2 weeks later tends to be the Thai version of the same thing. But Venerable Mahamogalana definitely had the ability, from what we know, from what we read and hear, had the ability to see beings in other realms. He had that ability, but he was more skilled in that than anyone else in the time of the Buddha. This was his thing. He was foremost in the use of psychic powers. He was an arahant. He had great samadhi, he had insight, but he had psychic powers. So sometimes the Buddha would send him on an errand. Sometimes he would do it himself out of his kindness to help beings. So he could also help the devas, go and remind them to practice and be mindful and be aware of the Dhamma, not to indulge in the pleasures of the heaven realms. And he could visit, in particular he was trying to help his mother to share merit with her so she could get a good rebirth. And he had a lot of karma with his mother or previous mothers. So he may have had a few mothers obviously over many lifetimes, but we all know his final death, he died before the Buddha, and it was due to another sect were very jealous of the Buddha and his leading disciples and their wisdom and the support they got. So this other sect hired tough guys, bandits, to go and kill Mahamogalana. And a few times he outran them or floated in the air or escaped from them, knew that they were coming and escaped. But in the end he reflected that it's just karma, because in a previous life, many, many lifetimes before, he had killed his mother. So he knew he'd never quite escaped that karma. It doesn't mean to say he was suffering with it because he was an arahant. But just as the way he died, he knew this is going to catch up with him. So finally he just let it happen, and he was murdered by a group of bandits, and the karma was from having previously hurt his mother in a previous life. But he did spend time trying to help his mother, who was in the hungry ghost realm. And so Buddhists will do, at this time of year, they do a lot of merit making for the hungry ghosts. So that's just a précis, a summary of that story. And that's the end of the Q&A session tonight.